All right. Good morning, Kid Cats. Hopefully my audio is good. I'm just going live now because I can and I'm ready, and it's earlier than was scheduled, but I'm already looking at comments. Parsons is already here. I would love to just read through his comments because they're great. And Slack, I hope this is rage bait for you. Woo! All right. So I want to start off by just playing a couple clips. They're both from Eric Weinstein, basically, and then I want to talk about it. Let's talk about it. Let's see here. Let's start with this one. Okay, this is a Jordan Hall tweet. Okay, no. Stop it. It's already playing. I will rewind it. Here we go. Let's go bigger.
And that's not available anywhere. It's not available in a university. It's
Stop it. Backwards. Here we go.
You're not getting a peer review from me. I know a lot more than you do about a lot of this stuff. You're getting an elite review. And my elite review says that a lot.
By the way, whenever I review what someone else has said, that's what I'm giving them, an elite review. It's not a peer review. It's an elite review.
A lot of this is bathwater, but a small amount of this is baby. And that's not available anywhere. It's not available in a university. It's not available in a journal. That's available on the Joe Rogan Experience. And Neil's right. If what you want is peer review, you should go to a journal and they will laugh you out. They will take one look at your email address. And if it doesn't end in .edu, I promise you're not going to get hurt. I don't think Neil deGrasse Tyson actually knows the history of peer review. This is Google Ngrams, and it tracks how often a phrase is found in the corpus of English language books published in the world. Peer review basically begins in the mid-1960s. Now, there were various forms of review. Editors, in particular, were very distinguished individuals who were chosen to not peer review things, to simply take a look at things and see who should be published and who should be not. Can we bring that back up? More or less, from what I can piece together, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, who started Pergamon Press, destroyed
Jeffrey Epstein's Ghislaine Maxwell.
Correct. He figured out how to destroy science and make a fortune by blowing out the number of journals and forcing every university to subscribe to every journal that he could figure out how to publish, because to not subscribe to all of the journals required an admission that you had an incomplete library. So that he diluted the quality of the editorship of the leading journals. This was a very informal, high-quality enterprise. Now, most of the destruction of science, in terms of how high quality it used to be, has taken place relatively recently, post Robert Maxwell. Because now we have an enormous number of journals staffed by people who can't spot publication cartels, where we agree to cite each other's work, and we agree to publish stuff, pay for play. All of the nonsense that you see with irreproducible research comes after this peer review thing. The peer review thing got woven in so that people think that the scientific method and peer review are effectively the same thing, where one is an unwanted infection from the biomedical universe, which had peer review much longer than everything else. Neil is giving you a very cursory back of the hand brush off. Okay?
I felt it.
All right.
All right. So that's one. Peer review is not equal to the scientific method. And according to Eric, he's giving you the background of peer review. All right, let's do another one. I want to start just from so on Piers Morgan. This just happened yesterday, I think. I believe so. But I just want to start from this one section where they get to talk about peer review. So it's Eric Weinstein and who else? Yeah, Brian Keating. All right, let's Let's do this one. Whoa, we're too fast. I listen to things on a too fast of a speed. Let's do it again. Am I sharing it? I'm probably not sharing it yet. Okay, here we go. Share screen. This one. Here we go. Let's rock and roll.
I have to respond to that.
Okay, respond
Brian,
first.
what you just said is not true. It's just the fact is
The
that
Einstein paper was not
for the
published
most
in
part,
1936 after peer review error?
sorry, that was John Tate, who was the editor at Physical Review before Simon Pasternak, before Sam Goodschmidt. Yes, it is true that most of Einstein's work was not peer-reviewed. That's why he was incensed. He never sent another paper to Physical Review. If I'm not incorrect, please check me on it.
Was that paper
The
peer
fact
reviewed?
is, there was one paper with Rosen that was peer-reviewed, which incensed Einstein because he was used to not being peer-reviewed.
And he was
in
wrong
other words,
about it. Until peer review
You're
pointed
not-
out by Eddington helped out as well and said that
You're
there was an error in
you're
his
not hearing me.
calculation.
Peer review is not referee review, right? We had external referees that were occasionally sought. But what you cite about the Royal Society is in fact an error introduced into the literature by Merton, the famous historian of science, who is the father of of Black-Scholes Merton fame. And that was an erroneous claim that peer review began, I think, in the 1700s. What we currently call peer review is far more recent, and it is fantastic to find out that our professor does not know the history of peer review in its own subjects. Because what we have is a chorus of people with the highest credentials repeating a fable. And we can't always tell when when malware has entered our minds. But I would submit to you, sir, that despite your pedigree, in general, your predecessors were not peer-reviewed in any modern sense of the term before the 1970s, certainly before the 1960s. The beginning of forms for external referees begins, I think, in the 1930s under John Tate. I just don't think you know the history.
I do know it, and in fact, I invite you to go down to the Royal Institution next time you're in London, and you'll see pictures of Michael Faraday, of J.J. Thompson, of Eddington. You'll see them in front of audiences. Was there a peer review process before journals? When would the journal Nature start?
The average
and-
person
and-
punching
and
themselves
what
in the face right now. As somebody that loves you two, literally, I know both these guys. Eric, I know very well. Both have been on my show. Brian, I love you guys. So I say this because I am begging you. The average person wants to chew through their TV set right now or their laptop as they're listening to this, and the reason is they don't care about this. It's already done. The
Tom,
world is
sorry.
No, hold on. Let
Tom.
me finish. The world cares about people like they want to hear what Joe Rogan.
There's some interesting points here. I wonder if that's true. Jan God, from your comments, maybe you're trying to chew through your screen right now, but I want to keep going for a while. Then I'll talk about it for a while. Then we'll open this up and have a little chatty chat. Come on. You can do it.
Rogan has to say. They want to hear who goes on his show. They are absolutely going to listen to Candace. I think, Brian, you brought that up. Candace is about to sweep the world. And if I could just get you guys on board with the reality that we are in a very difficult moment right now where, yes, you guys are being asked to do a public service, which is to collide with these people who do not have your scientific bona fides, but the average person does not care, but they will actually listen to your collision of ideas for sure, because I took a lot away from you talking to Terrence. And the first time I heard Terrence, I was like, maybe this is genius. I don't know.
You know, it's so interesting. I was going to say, actually, Eric, earlier that I saw Elon Musk recently, met him for the first time, and he did a fascinating Q&A about everything from colonizing Mars to humanoid robots and so on. But we talked about X and his purchase of Twitter and then into X. One of the best things I've seen in terms of populist peer review is community notes now on X, where I often see things which are spinning around, which are complete nonsense. And then you see a very well-sourced community note killing it. And it does seem to have an effect, because that in itself, because it's happening in the same medium, starts to also spread like wildfire and tends to kill them quite quickly. Are you a fan of what Elon is doing with X? Is this helping in terms of populist peer reviewing?
Right. Yeah. Again, this is one of these Wild West conversations where it's not peer review. The whole concept of peer review is peer.
Here we go.
And
here we go.
Community notes is community, right? And so in a certain sense, the point is it's an anti-peer review. It's working pretty well right now. But keep in mind that Wikipedia worked pretty well until people figured out how to game it.
Right.
So my concern is that what you're looking at with peer review and with community notes, which is anti-peer review, if you will, is technologies that are in the process of being probed and gamed. And just to refute what Tom was saying before, Tom, I don't disagree at all. We are going to have to deal with the Candace phenomenon. But the reason the Candace phenomenon is happening is that you don't have any expert dissident opinion. If you have 5 professors shout me down that I don't know what I'm talking about with respect to peer review, and I happen to be completely right, I will be told that I'm not an academic, despite the fact that we all speak the same language and have the same credentials. What is going on is that the world is not crying out for Candace Owen. It's crying out for, where is the physician with my daughter's interests at heart? Where is the biologist who's willing to stand up to a Tony Fauci and say, I completely disagree? Why is it that we keep having these fake consensuses? And these consensuses are basically determined by getting rid of the people who won't shut up and who won't sit down and who won't sing from the hymnal. And what I'm trying to say is, what you just saw was an interchange between 2 colleagues with a great deal of love and respect for each other on an issue where I'm claiming that the good professor is simply an error. And if you had somebody saying that around the Wuhan lab and the origin of COVID, or the potential danger of the vaccines, or the liability regime in which they were negotiated, that this is an abomination, that we can't sue the manufacturers, you would have a totally different world. Nobody would be listening to Candace Owens. They would be trying to track Jay Bhattacharya. They would be trying to track all of the experts who were standing up with their interests at heart. The big problem in the United States is we used to have experts in the right chairs who dissented. And now what you have is a group of people who know to keep their head down.
Brian, just want to end with just quick thoughts from you and Tom before we finish.
Also, I would ask why. We used to have experts that dissented, and now we don't. Why? And which experts do you trust, and why? And also, this cat over here, he's making good points. He's just like, the laity wants to listen to certain people. You know, and you could call that populism, you could call it whatever, but it's because they don't trust the experts. You know, who are the, yeah. This is like, what's the term? It's like community, oh dang it. What is it like? Well, I'm forgetting the word, but what do they call that when it's just like community peer review? What Eric called anti-peer review. But it's something like ratings on Airbnb or Yelp or anything else. It's just like all these, it's social media populism versus the experts. Well, how do you know which experts are the experts? Which credentialing matters? You know, I don't know. All right, I don't know if I want to stop here or keep going a little bit.
Give me some hope about the future of science. And clearly, I think it's indisputable that science and the integrity of science and scientists has never been under a bigger attack than it is today. A lot of it fueled by conspiracy theorists and social media. Give me some hope for the future of science and its integrity.
I think the hope comes from my students, the people that I work with, the incredible breakthroughs that I've been witness to, both personally and part of a team of 300 scientists that are working to uncover what happened during the first nanosecond in the cosmos's history, What kind of breakthroughs do we now unlock, knowing that the universe is suffused with dark energy? What do we learn about the future, possibly with new technology like high temperature, room temperature superconductivity, or perhaps fusion? It's never been a more exciting time to be a scientist, and to hear about science, its best days are behind us. I think that's nonsense. On the other hand, we have to guard against conspiracy theories and flat earthers and all sorts of anti-vaxxers and things like that, because there is always a grain of truth. As Isaac Asimov said, if you believe the earth is flat, you're wrong. But if you believe it's perfectly round too, you're also wrong, but you're less wrong. And I think what we want to do as scientists is not be held to this impossible Secret Service level of we can't make a single mistake. Recognize that we do make mistakes, but science is self-correcting. And part of that self-correction mechanism has to do with being analyzed by your peers. Whatever Eric and I disagree with about in the past, today peer review is perhaps, as I like to say, it's the worst system for gauging scientific process, except for all the rest.
This is like the blindness of democracy and liberalism. People say the same thing about democracy. Like, this is the worst form. It's like it's a bad form of government, but it's better than all the rest, or whatever. It's like he just said, because Eric was saying, where are the experts? The dissenting experts. Well, that's my canonize the heretics. If you systematically exclude all the people with dissenting opinions, either overtly or implicitly, to where the system automatically does the work for you. That's the systemic dangers of confessionalism. And if you do that within science, then you've excluded all the people that dissent. The Rupert Sheldrakes, they're hacks, they're quacks, they're woo, despite the fact they're following the scientific method and producing studies that follow the scientific method. But the peer review thing is binding and blinding. It's excluding people. It's excluding the heretics, the people that don't have the right orthodoxy. Okay, let's keep going, because I think the end of this, I want to keep playing the end of it, and then I'm just going to open it up. I'm already doing some commentary, but.
Tom?
All right. So the thing that I really want to make sure that I'm being heard on, Brian, because you keep repeating, we shouldn't be held to this SEAL Team 6 level of perfection. What I'm saying is science has a branding problem. You guys created a branding problem. I'll just say during COVID, where it was, hey, everybody listen to us and everything is going to be fine. Masks don't work, by the way, but save them for the health workers because they need them. It's like, so everyone's brain starts sketching out. Also, no one has talked about social media yet. Social media, this is done. The horses are out of the stable. The toothpaste is all over the floor. The genie has flown out of the bottle. We are living in a reality where everybody is a publisher. Everybody is going to say things, and people are screaming out for Candace Owens. I'm telling you right now, as somebody, I'm almost sure I'm going to disagree with every word out of her mouth. And yet, I am utterly fascinated by how she has already captured people in terms of their imagination, because this is what they want. As a marketer, I can tell you, you guys are terrible. Like, if I have to market you, oh God, even though I look at Eric and I'm like, is this the smartest human I've ever encountered? For sure. Do I want him at my house just whispering in my ear all the things to do? Absolutely. My life would be way better. However, from a marketing perspective, oh dear God. So it's like we have a much bigger challenge that we have to overcome. And Candace doesn't have that problem. She's electrifying. She captures what people want to hear. And what I'm saying is the service that you guys can now play in the world that we live in is to say science isn't about being right. Science is about two things. Number one, the pursuit of utility. Einstein's breakthroughs matter because they give us GPS and nuclear energy. That's the only reason that they matter. And the second thing is, we know we're wrong about a whole lot of stuff. And so our job is just go through what are all the things we're wrong about that are stopping us. And I hope I'm not talking out of class, Eric, oh, please God. But Eric has said to me many times, we ought to be traveling the cosmos. And we aren't, because string theory has gotten stuck. Exactly. So you have to get new ideas. You have to break the old paradigms in order to get the utility that you want. And if we judge every idea by its utility and not by where it comes from, we'll be in a much better place.
You know that the best thing about this debate, Tom, is that it's actually by having this kind of conversation on a platform like this that is watched globally in pretty big numbers now, that we can probably get to where you want to get science to. And the other thing I'd observe is I host a lot of debates between people who disagree, and they normally end up screaming at each other. What I loved about you three was the more abusive you became in a very nice, polite manner, the more you all laughed. That is the way to debate. So thank you all very much indeed.
All right.
Thank you, Piers.
That's it. Thank you, Piers. So I was also thinking the other day that I think it was, okay, so this is a shout out to Christian Baxter and his Burn Power conversation. I think Burn was talking about this, where he had this section there, which I think he beautifully articulated this, where he was talking about technology. And man, I couldn't even repeat it. Should I go find it and play this? Because this is the problem. Because utility, this is the problem that I have with what that guy said at the end with utility and science pursuing utility, which there's largely truth in. I don't know. People would quibble with that, I'm sure. Like T. Grog would say we're pursuing truth. But it's like the utility for what? To what end? For whom? Like what works? Works in what way? Toward what? This is the telos, the telotic end pull of a thing. And Byrne was saying, oh God, I'm sure that's what it was. Let's go find it. How fast can I find it? I didn't have this one queued up. Christian Baxter. What? Was he Seabax? Were you streaming just a little bit ago? You little silly goof. History. Yeah. What are we doing? Where's my history? Okay. Here we go. I'll just. What are we finding? Just in time. I'm done. What up, buddy? Weren't you talking to Byrne about if you're here? I'm pretty sure. And he mentioned technology and the problems with technology, and that technology goes to. Let me see. Can I find it? It's probably where I stopped. Oh nope. It's Taylor Swift. We don't need Taylor Swift. Impact of faith on music. Taylor Swift, influence on the music industry. I'm never going to be able to find it. Never mind. Scratch that. He was essentially saying that technology is introduced to ameliorate certain problems, but then it has trade-offs. It has negative trade-offs. And then you invent a new technology to ameliorate those trade-offs, those negative trade-offs. And then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And technological babble. That's why I come up with technological babble. Is essentially gets to the point where all the problems that you're getting, the unforeseen consequences of your technology, and then the technology to fix that. If the whole world is a nail, if all you have is a hammer, the whole world's a nail, right? And so if technology and technological progress is your solution to everything, and interventionism is your solution to everything, eventually you're going to create so much technology that it will collapse or eat itself, and it's the Ouroboros. And it's bad news. All right, I'm going to go look through some comments, and then people can come in here and talk. Okay, Elliot, I'm just going to say this, sir. You look a lot like someone I know, or that I know of, called Jordan. So are you related? Let's see, what do you say? Let's just talk about it. It is easier to follow an author's invitation to imagine that the earth is flat than to imagine that murder is right. Okay, let me think about this. It is easier to follow an author's invitation to imagine the earth is flat than to imagine that murder is right. I think that's true. I think it's true. Look at this beautiful man. There's a beautiful man coming. Everyone guess who it is. Everyone guess.
They never would have guessed that you were talking about me.
They know it.
I don't identify as beautiful.
Well,
I identify
I don't
as
care
wretched.
how you identify. You identify as wretched. Yeah, you and Todd Friel. You should be a co-host to Todd Friel's Wretched Radio.
I don't know. I don't think I know Todd Friel.
Man.
Wretched Radio rings a bell.
So I think Todd Friel was involved with. Are you familiar with The Way of the Master? How evangelical are you, Kirk Cameron?
I am familiar with The Way of the Master. I'm not familiar with that brand.
Okay. So this is part of my backstory and my history. I was really into The Way of the Master for a while. I have all of their DVDs downstairs, and it was a street evangelism thing. And so
Oh, yeah, I got shown that
Ray
stuff. Yeah, so
Comfort, Ray Comfort, and Kirk Cameron.
yeah, they would go up to people and be like, "Have you ever lied?"
Yeah, no.
They just go
But
through the Ten Commandments until they can convince you that you're a sinner, and then
until you're wretched, until you know
Yeah.
you're sufficiently wretched, and then they would offer the solution, the
Yeah.
antidote to the wretchedness. But I think
ABW, always be witnessing.
Yeah, I think Todd Friel got involved with them somehow, and then he runs this thing like if you don't like the worst versions of Calvinism, you could go and hate watch and just like have like the libs of TikTok freak out at Todd Friel as he does his Wretched Radio episodes because it's terrible.
Yeah, I go back and forth with whether or not I like the worst of Calvinism.
Don't we all?
I was watching Lecrae and Matt Chandler interview.
Is that
They did an
recent?
interview. Yeah. So Lecrae's dipping his toe into Christian YouTube,
Oh man.
and he does all right. He's a smart guy. But the Matt Chandler interview was really good. Speaking of Christian YouTube, there he is.
This is the Christian YouTube I'm okay with right here.
Yeah. Well, are you talking which Matt Chandler? I missed. I was trying to get on here.
He was on Lecrae's
Yeah.
The Deep End.
I saw it. Part of it.
It made me cry.
Whoa.
Just because it made me miss my megachurch, and because we looked up to the Village so much, and so I used to like just pump Matt Chandler into my ears constantly. And he seems to be, well, until like literally the day before that podcast came out, he was fairly scandal free.
What Mark Driscoll should have been.
I don't know. I think it. I don't think. I think it's. There's still skeletons in the closet.
Probably.
With
I mean,
Chandler?
there always are.
Yeah, so we were I was watching some of it, and then my wife sent me like an Instagram something or another. So apparently his dad is a child sex offender, and he's kind of covered it up, and he was a janitor at one of their campuses. Matt Chandler's dad was a hired child sexual abuser at one of their campuses.
Yeah,
And
that kind of thing is just unforgivable, even by God.
wow.
McMo, so here's the thing. I'm with you on.
I said that ironically.
Yeah, I know. Here's the thing about, everybody has this kind of line where like forgiveness stops, and the problem is the corruption and like the systemic abuses that happen out of authorities and hiding things. That's where the problem, I think, comes.
Go be a janitor at a different church.
Yeah.
Well, at no church, get a different kind of job where you don't have keys to the closets of, whatever. And
maybe don't work at a daycare.
Yeah, which a church operates once a week at least. So I think that's the kind of thing. And then, he had his Instagram DM issue that popped up like 2 years ago. I don't know if y'all were listening.
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
Vaguely, I have a vague memory of that.
No, I think, but like, wasn't that
like
that was researched really hard, right? Then there was like nothing really illicit.
But they weren't really super transparent about, what it entailed. But, they sent him on sabbatical and said, he's cured now. He's holy now. I don't know, but that's so true though about like that heart language, your history and your like how you're raised, and all that kind of stuff. I feel you, dude.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the exact moment or like what it was he said that got me a little misty. And I think that it had, well, yeah, I think it had to do with like him talking about the like group of men he has around him or whatever. And, he's got, of course, like it's all connected to the story of David. There's got to be a biblical reference for anything. that he does. But you know, it's kind of like the idea of like David's mighty men or whatever, having like a table of people around you. And I'm like, oh, you're fashioning yourself after a king who was a man after God's own heart. Bold move, Chandler. But it just the idea, like that kind of, it made me remember and reminisce and feel a little nostalgic for a time in my life where I really thought that kind of like accountability and discipleship and community fellowship, that all of those things were somehow going to like be a bulwark for me to like keep me within the fold. And so obviously that was a lie.
Yeah,
but
because it becomes insulation.
For some, yeah, I think for when you're at the top of the hierarchy, it becomes insulation. But for me, those were the people that I would have put and said were those people for me when I worked at the mega church were the people who ended up pushing me out. And so, yeah, it brought up a lot of the betrayal, but also some of the like, what's the word? Yeah, like I can't think of the idiom, but it's like I was misty-eyed. You know, I was like young, naive, doe-eyed is maybe the better one. But yeah, so it made me think of being a young man, and it was just like it was right place, right time, because I was out of money for my medicine, and you know, I was like having to deal with all of the things I normally numb, mostly just neuroticism. And so that's what I've been thinking about the last couple of days in relation to that, is like, how do I even, and I thought about it this morning because I woke up at 2:30. So I'm just giving you guys the whole spiel. I'll pay both of you for your time after this. But yeah. How do you steward your neuroticism? Because PVK did a talk with one of those Dutch handsome boys, and he was just going through his big five, and I felt very envious because he's like got all the good stuff and like none of the bad stuff.
Yeah,
he's just happy, and I'm like, what do I do with all of this neuroticism and all of this withdrawal and all of this volatility that I got? Rough in these streets.
Same what I got, buddy. Me and you. I don't know my withdrawals. What is your withdrawal?
I don't want to say. I don't remember the numbers.
I want to know if you're going to quit me.
No, I'm if I remember correctly, I'm slightly higher in volatility than I am when withdrawal, but I don't know. I kind of feel like personally that kind of depends on the day. Yeah. Like same thing with agreeableness. Like there's some days where I feel like I don't want to disagree with anybody, and then there's some days where there's nobody could say anything that I would agree with. So
yeah, you're a very emotional guy. So like my volatility, 93rd percentile, way up there, feeling those feelings very strongly. My withdrawal is 31 though, so it's a lot lower. That's my like PVK's withdrawal. I think he said is 1.
Yeah, 1.
So like PVK ain't quitting you. That's why I love PVK.
Name that movie.
That's right.
I can't quit you.
I never took the Big Five, but I did the Enneagram back in 2016.
Let me
know
guess.
Who put me through? Well, yeah, go for it.
Are you 6?
No, I might be now.
4?
Who knows? Nope.
Are you talking about Enneagram?
3.
Nope.
Dang. Okay, I'm gonna stop it at 3 guesses then.
Do you want to guess, Luke?
Are we talking about Enneagram?
Yeah.
No, I think you're, well, I'd say 7.
Boom.
Yeah.
Got it. Yay.
Damn, really?
Yeah. Good times. Good
That makes
vibes.
sense.
Good vibes. They're also the most likely to be addicts because they don't like pain. They like pleasure. So
no bad feelings. Get that away from me.
Yeah, so I'm going to go numb it with something else. So on that, I've got a funny story about it. So it's not really funny, but I guess. So y'all know the Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. The guy that produced that, Mike Cosper, he was a worship pastor at a fairly large church in Louisville called Sojourn, kind of Young Restless Reform, Acts 29.
That was another one of our we looked up to them. Yep.
So I was a worship leader. We were loosely connected to Acts 29, went to some conferences and whatnot. And my pastor was like, hey, I want you to get some consulting, for the job. I want us all to get coached up. And so that week, like Mike Cosper dropped a link on Twitter saying, hey, I'm doing consulting. I was like, boom. So,
Yeah.
So we did
We looked
like,
at that too.
we did I did like, I don't know, 4 or 6 meetings with him, and he's got me going on the Enneagram, and he got my report back, and he's like, well, you're unhealthy on this one, unhealthy on this one. Like, how there's like the healthy and the unhealthy. I ranked like I was in the middle of basically the most unhealth of my life. And yeah. And so he got to see, that part of me. I was so totally embarrassed. It's like, I'm not healthy. I'm not, good. Anyways, that's my Enneagram, but I never did the Jordan Peterson Big Five. Should I do the Big Five? Do I need to go do it to be in the club?
Yeah. I mean, to be officially in, there's a few things you have to do. No, I do like the Big Five. I don't know. They're all great, and it's kind of one of those things. All models are false, some are useful, and then I've had people tell me, and I think this is true. This is what's so funny even about the Enneagram is people say, people that aren't that well versed in the Enneagram will be like, or when you just start getting into it, you think it's this absolutizing thing and then you start letting it interpret things for you, or you think, like, oh, you're a 7. Now I know everything about you. Well, that's not how it works. It's kind of like, I've heard it described as shades and even tones and textures of a color. So I'm a 4, which is associated with red. And you could say, well, then I understand what you're like. No, you don't. There's like infinite colors and textures of red.
Shades. Yeah. Well,
yeah,
I'm color deficient. So
yeah,
my wife's a 4. My wife's a 4, and
4s and 7s. It's a good match.
So it is. It takes some fine tuning, but yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, like anything, if you're unhealthy, it's not going to work. But 4s tend to be more melancholic, into darkness. They really like dark things.
Yeah.
And 7s like a lot of fun things. So they're a good compliment.
What are you? What's the pessimism in you? What's the dark kind of?
Well, this is where I'm a super weird 4 because I'm also I don't tend to be that depressive, and I'm super high. Like, I'm an extroverted 4, which is rare too.
That is, yeah.
And I'm very enthusiastic and positive and optimistic largely, but there's darkness in there. Like, all my favorite art is dark.
Yeah. And you're kind of in touch with the feminine too. Like, because when what the hell are you talking?
This is like everyone Sherry was saying earlier. This is such a great TLC thing too, because like someone will click on this maybe just because of the title, because of all this stuff, and they'll be like, they're not talking about this at all anymore.
Yeah,
like,
sorry, Luke. I saw your face and I was like, you know what? I gotta talk to the homie. I don't give an F what he's talking about.
That's more important. See, that's a classic TLC move. It's just like, we're talking about this topic. Who cares?
I mean, I have things to say about peer review, but I'd rather review my peers,
Ooh,
Yeah,
I'm an ENFP, Enneagram 4.
You're ENFP too? Look at that. We're twinsies.
Yeah. That's one of the.
ENFP is like, that's not that's extroverted,
okay. Intuitive, feeling, perceiving.
Yep.
I was the I was the positive one, whatever that golden retriever type person was. I haven't taken those in a while though, and I feel like some of them would have changed because some of that.
My mom and dad learned one at the Ridgecrest Fall Festival of Marriage one year. That was like
Ridgecrest.
Well, there's the like phlegmatic and I can't remember all of those words, the long words, but my dad used to always talk about otters, beavers, lions, and golden retrievers.
Yeah, that was one of them.
Yeah. I'm an otter.
You and Jedediah Pascal if we talk about otters enough, Jed will get in here. He loves otters. He has like a
love otters.
psychedelic otter T-shirt. Are you jealous?
Otter's probably my second favorite animal behind pandas.
Otters are very cute. They're very fun to watch. And you're not joking.
Put that on.
I
Is that
love
your
pandas,
furry
dude.
thing?
Are you a furry?
Yeah, I'm a furry.
When McMo's getting intimate with his wife, she's like, "Put on the panda."
No, this would. If my wife saw this, we would be barren for another 10 years probably.
Oh, geez, that's dark.
Put on
That's
the
a good
panda
immigrant
hat.
core thing to say.
Put on the
We're
panda
not-
hat, baby.
We're not barren. That was the wrong choice. Childless.
There you go. Hey, there's miracles can happen.
That I know of.
Hmm.
We haven't tried to have kids yet, but we also haven't accidentally had kids yet. So it's kind of, is what it is.
Look, how many do you have? You have 3?
3.
I have 3. Yeah.
Which is funny because I don't know if I sent it to you. I'll send it to you. I sent a recent picture of all my kids to a bunch of people. And
Yeah.
I think Luke from, I don't know if his last name is on here. He often goes by Lukey, but he's a Michigan guy. He's a corner person, although he's taken not as interested lately. But he was just like, "What?" He's like, "Those are your kids? I thought you had like 5 kids." I'm like, "Come on, no." I probably would have. I think I wanted because we had kids relatively early, and I probably wanted like 7. I was wanting like an Angelina Jolie family. I wanted just to represent the heavenly nations. I'm like, we got to have all the kids, all the different ethnicities, and lots of them. But I mean, that's just like that was young idealism. Like I didn't know what the hell I was getting into, so yeah, I could have done a bunch, but I don't know. We didn't. My wife had really hard, difficult pregnancies,
Yeah, we
so
had a couple of those.
it was tough. I mean, she just got super bad nausea, and she hates being nauseated, so that was one of the struggles.
We
But-
did. One of my kids was born 1 pound 14 ounces. She was born 3 months early,
Hmm.
preeclampsia, and then we had another one, something kind of like preeclampsia called HELP syndrome, and he was born 6 weeks early. And our middle one was full term, but we were kind of like, we can't roll any more dice on that. That's kind of
Yeah,
intense.
The middle kid's going to hold that against y'all for the rest of his life. He's just going to, he or she, I don't know the gender of the,
It's a
of the
girl.
child.
they haven't decided yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Christian, you let me know the gender of your children once they're all adults.
Well, they'll have to let me know first, and then I'll let you know.
Yeah, but I could see that's the type of middle child thing. It's like, I don't even get the attention of having any like birth issues. I was just so easy. Mom and dad just pay me no attention.
Yeah, she gets plenty of attention. She's the one that's like dialed into the culture. She's 10, but she's always, my oldest one's kind of head in the clouds artist, and my son he's too young anyways, but he's too shy. But she's like, this is the cool thing. I know what's happening in our town because my friend told me, because her parents like, I'm like, what? She's like in the culture, she gets things.
That's
cool.
another personality thing, right? Like birth order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
It's just like another one of those patterns or frames that we put on things.
What am I? I have 4 siblings.
Number 2. No.
I have 3 siblings. I'm an idiot.
See, I think 4 kids always trips me up. It's not as clear cut, 1 kid's easy, only child. That's a thing. 2 kids, you got the older and the younger. Also easy. 3 kids, older, middle, younger. 4,
dynamic
to-
shit.
some sort of quartile system. I
It's
can't
like
I
quantum
can't make
theory
heads or tails.
stuff.
I think
Well,
you're the youngest, right? Luke, you give off young boy
He's
vibes.
the baby.
That's correct.
Baby Luke.
Look at
He
this.
doesn't
People
want
know.
the attention. He expects the attention.
Yeah, exactly. I don't necessarily want it, but I need it.
I'm number 2. So we had 3 pretty close together, my parents, but then my little brother's 10 years younger than me. He's more like an only child.
Dang.
Like, so there was like all of
Uncle
us-
Christian.
Yeah, basically.
Well,
And,
I'm the oldest, and I no longer look up to either of you. Now I feel like I'm the one in charge here. So, Luke, if you want to rearrange the photos so that I'm on top, that'd be fine by me.
Am I?
Yeah, Click and drag, baby.
Dude.
There you
There.
go.
Okay.
There we
Now
go.
I feel the feng shui has changed.
The balance of power has shifted.
Dude. Yeah, no, I'm the second. I'm middle child. Yeah. So I was like hungry for attention, like you were saying. Seeking it out.
I wasn't
So
hungry
here
for it, but I
here
got
I-
it.
Here I am on the YouTube. Oh. So yeah, fun times.
All right, guys, what do you think
Let's
about your peer review? Let's
Yeah, I was about to
let's
say,
do it.
let's get back to the crisis in science. I don't think that it can be as simple as what it sounds like. Eric, right? Is that Eric
Yeah.
or Brett? Yeah, Eric wants. Well, for one, he just wants his genius to be recognized and
for sure,
and to not be kind of ousted because he thinks differently, or he's ahead of people. And so I'm sure, like, for his whole life, he's been, from what I know of his story too, he's kind of been put down by people he considers less smart than him. But then there's also a sense that I get where it's like, let the experts be wild or something. But it sounded to me like it was hitting on your kind of like canonize the heretics idea.
Yeah, you kind of have to. That was the what's the Bilyeu guy? He was kind of saying the PR problem is that you tried to basically silence the heretics instead of just let them be heretics, and that ended up creating, like, you've got to find the space for them. And I think that Joe Rogan, like Table, has operated as that space in the culture, and he was able to do it somehow. And in that podcast, Eric Weinstein makes that statement. He said something like, at this table, it's like held something culturally pretty significant, and it's the court gesture that's doing that because it's comedian. So it doesn't have to be taken too seriously. He can kind of get away with some of that. And
I don't know how much.
Yeah,
sorry.
I was just going to say that I think that by Eric going on there and having that conversation with Terrence Howard, because like that was one of the best things that could have happened. Like I thought it was incredible.
Yeah, it was really great because it's someone. The part that most stuck out to me, the peer review part, is cool, but this is probably where I'd push back on Eric, because he says a lot of things I really like and qualifies things in ways that I think are really good. I'm really grateful for his voice, but he has a point in that second, in the one where he's on with Terrence Howard, where he says, the problem is, Terrence, is you always want to go into what things mean, and he's like, we don't even know what they are. And I'm like, yeah, we never do, Eric. Nobody knows what anything is. That's my George MacDonald quote all the time. Is like, you want to talk about the essences of things and you don't get it. Like, you don't understand. You can't get there.
Yeah, but look at that move, right? Like, you either start with the way things are and you make up a story about what they mean.
There you go.
Or you start with a story of what they mean, and that gives you what they're for, aka what they are.
And that's the job of scientists. They're supposed to be the ones that name everything. So
yeah, that's their job, but that's what humans are doing all the time, right? Like that. This is kind of the Heideggerian, like, ready to hand idea. It's like, is a doorknob the image that pops into your head when I say doorknob, or the sounds that rhyme with floor rob, or is it the tool that you use to open doors, or is it just the shape that your hand makes and the motion of your hand that means that you are entering a new room? Like, I think that all of those kinds of ideas are, well, is there any value in kind of choosing whether to start with the story and go to the, like, start where should we start, right? Like, do we start with where things are and go to what they mean, or do we start with what they mean and go to what they are? That seems like almost like a is that a case-by-case basis or a personality thing? I don't know. Is that an energy essence distinction? I'm not familiar with the. This is not a pipe. This is not a live stream. That's one of my favorite pieces of work. I've thought about getting that as a
live
tattoo.
stream, therefore I am.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Let's see what Matthew says here. But you also have to tread carefully, Luke. You can't inhibit all investigation and communication because all is combinatorially explosive.
Well, you have to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, I think that the problem is like so much what digital technology has done. It's, you know, Terrence is doing some science. He's not doing formalized science. He's not doing institutionalized science, but he was doing some kinds of science on his own outside the bounds because we can. Yet he's got gaps from, you know, he's got some ignorance here and there, and he would point those. But then there was like, but this thing actually, you know, is interesting and is valid, and so the fear of like saying, if you're, you know, you have, this all has to be inside the institution, this all has to be within the orthodoxy, or else the world's gonna, you know, but the cat is already out of the bag. And so we have to, what that table conversation was exhibiting is like, here's kind of how you don't need to just be like the Neil Tice deGrasse or whatever his name is,
Neil deGrasse,
you know, just
Neil deGrasse,
smoke the grass Tyson, you know, like, you don't just need to like write these people off because you're, and then stay in your tower. You actually do have to address it because it's going to get out there. And that was kind of their point with Candace Owens. You can't just write her off like you're stupid. It's out there. People are going to consume this stuff. You have to figure out the way to deal with the new world that we live in with information.
Okay, a couple things I want to bring up. So Slack, love you. This is the first time Slack has said something where I'm just like, nope, 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 nope. Or this, or the Bugle, same thing. Meaning itself is kind of unknowable. I fundamentally disagree. This is why I say the person is the nexus and the locus of all meaning. Meaning is inherently tied up into value and into action. That's what meaning is. That's why anyone can act in the world, which is inherently personal and not objective. To think of meaning as like within the subjective objective frame is to completely misunderstand what meaning is, which is why we have the meaning crisis. That meaning, you know what meaning is because that's how you manifest in the world. It's about acting in the world. It's about being. Meaning is about being. Knowledge is about, I don't know, ego. Knowledge puffs up, but love edifies.
I would point that to something like, because I know Slack likes video games. It's like they are meaningful to him. They've carried stories, experience, you know. But if you just like step back and you're like, well, these things are just bits and pieces, you know, zeros and ones, and they don't mean nothing. They don't have any inherent meaning or something like that. It's like, no, there's a lot of meaning. You know, we do know that it means something, that because it has our attention.
Yes,
has my attention. And so
exactly,
means,
that's like the notes of Peterson and Vervaeke, right there.
Right, wherever I am attending to, and that, then I mean, when you were talking about that, like, Pearson, what do you believe in X, Y, and Z? And it's like, well, I want to act as if I do, because I think my value for what that represents, aka sacrifice, is what I want to attend to. And so, and that's a way I can do that. So yes, it holds meaning.
But Slack, right here, what you're saying is the meaning of a thing. You're essentially saying the essence is unknowable, and I agree with you. But that's not. I would say that's not what meaning is. Meaning isn't the essence. The meaning is its value and its salience to you or to any person.
Okay, so here's a quick question: if meaning has to do with attention and acting, if meaning is acted out, why then can actions have multiple meanings?
To other persons or to yourself? Is that the question?
Good question.
To both. I mean, like the first thing that comes to mind is a dancer, you know, or a musician who's simultaneously moving their body, but then they're also expressing themselves, and they're also performing. You know,
I think
like,
the nature of reality is relational, and we are a multi-unity. We aren't just like, so the meaning, we are these patterns moving through time, and we are like, we are the unity of all those different points throughout time. And so there can be multiple meanings. I mean, a lot of the answer to your question, I think, is what Peter Rollins is always going on in the Church of the Contradiction, is that it's Christ the eternal Tao. There's always the identity of identity and non-identity in everything, which is why you're going to have meaning and non-meaning and multiple meanings all the time.
Yeah, I think that there's still, maybe it'd be helpful because I thought about this when you were talking, Christian, like there seems to be a difference in the way that we use meaning and versus meaningful. Like
when we ask like, what does that mean? We're not necessarily talking about
meaning.
Yeah, like we're not necessarily talking about the same thing as when we say something is meaningful. Because we can not know what something means and it be very meaningful. Like you actually know that feeling like deeply, like you know, if you've ever been broken up with, or if you've ever been in a fight with someone you love, there's like a lot of those moments where you're like, I have no clue what this means, but I know that this is very meaningful.
Yeah. So like something like a definition, sometimes we use that word mean related to something definitional, and maybe that's not the precise or way to use that word. Like,
yeah, I don't think so. That's my, because I talk about definitional.
But that's what that's what McMo was kind of like making me think, like, what does this mean? What's the definition of this thing versus
well, then there's also, you know, the mean as in the average, and then
that's what that made me think of, because like if you're saying, if I want you to give me the average of what this thing is, what does this mean? You know, give me the average response of what that thing means. You know, it's like, oh, phone means communication, you know, because that's the, you know, the majority of what that means or something.
What does it mean for me to be mean? And what do I mean when I do this?
Whoa.
You know, it's like, yeah, is that a meaningful gesture?
My 7-year-old son asked me about that the other day. You know, he's like, so he was like, what does that mean? I was like, yeah, some people think that's rude, you know? And he's like, so can I do it? And I was like, I don't care if you try it. You want to see how it feels? You know, like he wanted to kind of see what that felt like, because there was taboo. There was taboo related to it. And so I think he like kind of went around corner and like, you know, whatever. And yeah, it's like something, we're not going to just do that because some people think that's rude, but you know,
Who did he flip off though? Just like himself behind the corner?
He just wanted to see what it felt
like.
like
Took him to the gap.
Raise that middle finger up and see what that felt like, because, you know, some kids in class had said something, I'm sure, at one point, and, you know, whatever. Or maybe his sister said, like, don't use that finger, you know, like, yeah, that kind of thing.
Should have took him to the mall and just been like, that lady, let's try it out.
Yeah, I've always dreamed about having a kid one day and just like teaching him to do that, for, you know, telling him that it's a different thing, but then having him in the back seat do that when drivers cut me off or whatever.
Wave high.
Yeah.
Wave high to that guy.
It's interesting too how, you know, different people do it differently. You know, some people like will leave their other fingers up. You know, I'm just doing it for this.
Your ring finger, yeah.
I'm doing my ring finger. You know, this is like a, oh my gosh. You know, this is for you guys. But then some people, you know, they'll do it like this. There's variances.
Yeah. Okay, let's get back here. So Grog is here. Thank God. I know McMo. I know you love Tim. So science is imperfect. What a revelation. Okay, but like Grog, I don't know if you listened to the beginning of the thing and peer review and what it is. And the main question and idea that I had behind this whole stream is essentially these guys' idea of, because they were saying peer review is not the exact same as a scientific method, but peer review is the system, the closed controlled system of the properly credentialed people who
created by Ghislaine Maxwell's dad.
Yes, that are the acceptable experts that can either validate or invalidate certain studies.
Oh, so like papal authority or something.
That's essentially what I'm talking about. It's like a magisterium. It's a sacrosanct religious magisterium.
No, it's objective. No, it's objective, Luke.
I just don't see how that's not, like, how is it not the same thing? Like, that's what I don't get. Let's try to steal Grog. Come on here and steel man yourself. If you had to steel man Grog, Christian, how could you steel man that science as it's currently operating?
It's our best attempt, you know, and the steel man is that I have a Mac computer behind, you know, I've got like all this stuff. That's the steel man that he like, that's Grogan's steel man, as far as I can tell, is like, look around you at technology. It has done something. Something has done something. And maybe we point to peer review is a part of that. I don't know if you can, if that fits into, science and design or technology and design, but yeah, all the tech that we're using that makes this so simple that even 10 years ago, this wasn't simple, that it's done something, that it has power and effect, but so do other institutions, that are related to emotion or something. And I think that yeah, that's the steel man. The peer review is that's the best we've got because we're human and we have to come together to make things happen, to build things. And so this is but all those things, all these good intended things, I think because we're also human, you have to acknowledge that their ability to become corrupt. And when it doesn't need to be tried. You don't need to try to save the institution. You need to continue to point at what's true. And if there is corruption and it's true, we need that's actually the better stance that actually will build trust. But if the people at the top are wanting to be so insulated, which this even goes back to the Matt Chandler thing we were just talking about, they want to protect, something themselves, or that then that's the corruption, and that's actually not science at that point. That's that's humanity.
Right. Well, that's the Upton Sinclair quote that I love, that it's hard to get a man to see something if his salary depends upon his not seeing it. But you could replace salary with reputation, credibility, anything, and this goes to this point of Phlebas, because I completely agree with you. Heretics get canonized after they're dead. While they're alive, they're treated like poop.
Ooh, nice.
And I think that's largely true. But I guess what I would propose or ask the question of is, how about we don't kill the heretics and we learn from them? How about that? Is that possible? Can we do that? And that's in religion and in science. How about that?
Well, that's an interesting thing, because the first time I ever tried to broach Peterson with somebody, the response I got was, "Isn't he a heretic?" And I'm talking, this was 17. And so what happens when in your lifetime someone isn't completely, they tried to burn him at the stake, and it so they tried to cancel him and get this voice out, and so he's kind of like a living heretic in the fact that he wasn't straight up a Christian faith person, and he wasn't towing the scientific line either in his thing. And so nobody, that's what that kind of makes me think of.
I've yet for it to have anybody prove to me that science even exists.
Oh,
I think that science is a science of the gaps. I think that when you don't have the cognitive power to understand what's going on, you use a study, you read, you try to use your intellect to fill in the gaps. I realize I just kind of did a gradient between irony and seriousness, so I'm going to try to maybe restart. But I was actually thinking about this earlier today, which is the idea. I think that a lot of people consider science to be the peak or the tip of the spear in regards to truth. That how do we get truth? This is, maybe it's like democracy or something. It's not the best, science isn't the best way to get to truth, but it's better than all the others. Something like that. It's not perfect, but it's the best that we have right now.
Here's what it brought up for me. Science is building tools. We've been building tools time since that's maybe part of, what makes us distinct as part of humanity. We're still building, we're still making hammers, and we're still making, things to cook with and we're still doing smoke signals.
Yeah, I think that needs to be, I don't know.
I'm not saying science exists in the way I'm just saying we're still that's part of our humanity is making tools.
That feels more like technology to me. And I think they often get conflated. Even when people talk about we've cured malaria. Well, did we cure that with science, or did we come up with a technological
Yeah, we built
solution?
a tool. We built a tool.
Right.
You
And
know?
so when I think of science, I think of the spirit of science, I guess. I think of the scientific method. I think of humans, I think of the Enlightenment values of wanting to look out into the into the universe. I want to look out of my eyes and understand what I see. And so you do that by asking questions. You do that with forming hypotheses, and then testing your hypotheses. And so that's supposed to be science's like claim to fame, is that it's testable. But the truth is, when people are telling us to trust the science, that explicitly means do not test this.
That's a faith proposition.
Right. And so how do you even trust the science? Like, I trust that what that means is I'm trusting that someone else is testing this.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is part of that too, and part of our best understandings of whenever we're like, we try to be, when we're not deep scientists ourselves, is we have to understand it through a narrative structure. We have to understand what science is from a story about what science is. You can tell the story of evolution. You can tell the story of Newton's apple. You can tell the story of how penicillin was made. You can tell these stories, and that's
even equations.
We say sometimes that is what science is for many people. Now, other people, it's a job, where you
yeah, Grog. This is what I got to do just so that I don't, turn volatile.
Oh, dear.
I am a VOC, a volatile organic compound. Yeah, but I was going to say too, even equations are narratives, because, and this is getting into some of the stuff that's way above my head, and so I'm probably in some Terrence Howard territory here.
This is where we roll.
But like, you can't have an equation without time, because 1 + 1 = 2, but 1 + 1 really just equals 1 + 1, unless unless you're saying that like at first there was 1, and then there was 1, and now there is 2. Yeah, so it's the same thing of memory or whatever. But like,
this is why I love that quote: "Memory is the purveyor of reason," because you can do addition if you don't know what plus is, if you don't know what 1 is, if you don't know what 2 is. Yeah.
And thank science, God gave us, math.
I would throw the Stephen quote there again.
Yeah, Stephen's had some good ones.
Yeah.
Science is about modeling, not about stories. They're different. Yeah, I'm saying that for many people who aren't actual scientists, science is a story. Like we have the
scientism, I would say, the story.
Well, yes, but it's also how we go through our lives thinking about like, oh yeah, the cell, the idea of the cell, you got the mitochondria, and it came in from this, and it's kind of this little thing, and we have to tell a story about what we believe. Now, how we learn about that, how we name, how we get the categories for these things, I guess it's a real process. It's a real process that people are doing, and they're using models like you said. But some of it goes back to recognizing patterns and naming them, which I've heard on this one. This has stuck with me forever. This is from old apologetic days. But that Adam was the first scientist because he was given the job to name the animals. The taxonomy is a real part of it's a real part of science. Is the naming, like the DNA double helix had to be. It was something observed, and then we named it. And
okay, here's the thing too that I often bring up. I'm going to share the screen. So like this is
I would like T-Grog to answer what the technology, what science the technology of language is based on.
Guys, I only have like 5 minutes, so
okay, you go.
I just wanted to say what Christian was talking about with like the narrative structure. Like it's true that the experiments are like done in, you could say, whatever, not narratively, but there is always a narrative behind where does the hypothesis come from. Like, why are you testing this thing? And like a lot of the time, it's like, I don't know. Like all the weird sex stuff, it comes from Kinsey being like, oh, these weird mud wasps will just try to mate with anything. Maybe humans are the same. That's my hypothesis. I'm going to test that out. And you know, and so then that like directed his whole line of research. But it's like, where did that hypothesis come from? And, you know, most of that stuff is found in a narrative of motivations, personal stories, you know, and assumptions about the world and all
Meaning,
that stuff.
value.
Yeah.
Even if you read a scientific, like a paper or a study, it's got an abstract, it's got explanation of how the experiment was run, and it's got a conclusion.
Yeah.
That's you can't tell me that's not narrative.
Here you go. Here's the answer to your question. The configuration of the human brain and structure of the throat. It is physiology and neuroscience. That is where language comes from, not from yellow.
It's neuroscience. Think about that statement. It's physiology and neuroscience.
Yes, in this line of thinking, then the Big Bang comes from science.
The study of the body, and it is the science of neurology. Like, that's where language comes from.
Language comes from the science of the brain. So we were doing science, we were doing neuroscience, and that's how humans evolved into language having beings. Yeah. And in this same type of thinking, the entire universe is preceded by science, just like Phoebus says.
And it's God. So it's God, right? It's the unmoved mover.
And in that case, at that point, when you go, you know, when you get to the point of the singularity, like before the Big Bang, you're in metaphysics, you're in philosophy, you're in speculation, you're in mysticism.
Well, and that was the thing. It was when whoever discovered, and the hypothesis seemed to be real about, say, said Big Bang. They didn't like the story that told, because if at one point it was thought that the universe was eternal. Terrence Howard still thinks it is, but it's like, to say that this has a beginning. Oh, I don't like that. I don't like what that narrative implies, you know, and then you've walked away from, you walked away from a question because you didn't like its implications, and that's not.
Yeah, and this is the thing with Grog's last comment. He's like, okay, so Grog gets to the point of unknowing, and then he wants to say, like, I'm here at this point of unknowing. I'm at this, intellectually defensible place. I'm not making assumptions I can't prove. But that just means you believe in nothing. and you prefer believing in nothing over to believing in a God you can't understand.
Just like the non-theist, he believes in nothing.
Yeah, and if he really did, like, think about that and what it means to believe in nothing, that might, actually be an interesting conversation. But the whole conversation about, like,
here's
science explaining everything is just so ridiculous to me. I can't understand it. It just seems like a cult.
Here's the thing: superstitious people hate science. So I work my full-time career is in applied science. I take medicine created by scientists that are ordered by doctors, and I inject them into people. That's what I do for a living. I apply the science, like at the end point of the science touching the person. And a lot of the choices and that are made, we think like, oh man, when someone has open heart surgery, look at how far science has come, and like the first heart surgeries done in Arkansas were like in the 70s, somewhere between 70s and 90s. I can't remember. Maybe in the, anyways, not that long. And, but when there's problems, the answers to the problems are still kind of blunt. Sometimes they are blunt. It's like, oh man, there's all this, that meme of Zach Galifianakis with the numbers flowing over the screen. I'm talking about, like, oh, that's what the doctor's like. It's like, no, he's kind of like throwing a blunt instrument at a problem sometimes. It's not like this. It's, he has an algorithm. He has an answer to it. It's not like, and we create these algorithms to try to solve these problems. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's a very human, endeavor of, let's see if this works, I guess. And that's why they call it practicing medicine. Now, there are things that seem more objective, like the CT scan, that the ER doctor orders, and it's like, well, this looks like this is too big, it shouldn't be this big, or there's looks like a blockage here, there shouldn't be a blockage. That's but sometimes we think about those things, and there is levels of expertise. I'm not saying that there, I do trust different doctors with different things, but it's still such a very human endeavor of
it seems like we still need to disambiguate technology, science, and exploration. But when people say science, they mean kind of all of those things at once, and they also mean the religion of the late 19th century, that we're still trying to burn at the stake if we could.
And I'll even say this, because when we talk about some kind of purity, some kind of all-knowing thing, like, man, we can open somebody's heart and we can replace it. We can mix the vessels around so that there's flow to the other places. But what we have a lot of trouble fixing is the cause of the problem, which is human behavior. And the human behavior isn't just
now, Christian, we fixed that one too. You do get the right incentives. You put people in front of screens. You give them candy.
That's that's
you're talking about the solution, brother.
All right, Michael.
More heart surgery.
Michael, you talk before you leave.
Well, the other thing I want to say is just, it's funny because, when we look at the 2020 incident or whatever, so much superstitious behavior on the part of people who were claiming to be the most, trustful of science, like so much. It was so superstitious in the way, like the approach that people took to that stuff, like, which a lot of it was like, clearly, I'm like, okay, this thing, this sweaty face thing that I'm like, this is not good. Where like I'm breathing through this wet, sweaty thing because I'm in somebody's house and like they say I'm supposed to. So I'm like, I don't care, I'm taking it off. Like I can tell when it's hard for me to breathe, that's worse for my health, like, and that, stuff like that. Which I'm sure everybody will have, people will have a million comebacks to that. But yeah, it was superstitious behavior. Like, superstitious behavior is a pattern of action. It's not about whether you're using rabbit splits and evil eyes and stuff like that. You can be superstitious with stuff that
if you're not doing white magic, you're being used by dark magic.
Yeah.
And that's basically the answer.
Here's a great story to that. So how was hand washing discovered to be important for surgery? It's like barely 100 years old that it was a good idea to wash your hands before you did surgery. It used to just be like, we're going to try to save this guy, and here we go. Sterile technique. So it's about control. But the funny thing is, sometimes we want to ascribe a type of perfection to these processes. So there's a problem. Central lines in hospitals are creating infections, systemic bloodline infections. It's called eclampsia, central line associated bacterial infection. And so we need to make sure now. Used to, when my father-in-law was putting in central lines back in the 80s, they didn't care. You wash your hands, you put on some gloves, and you put in a central line. Now, when you put in a central line, you take the sterile kit and you open it up and you do sterile procedures and you wash your hands and you put your sterile gloves on, because we can keep central line associated bacterial infections from happening. So science, we can do peer-reviewed studies on how we can prevent bloodstream infections from people when they're getting a central line put in. And, it's still just this idea of try to be as clean as you can.
Yeah.
That's the answer. And we have a process, try to be as clean as you can.
Yeah. Shouts out to Phlebas and his folk for keeping us clean. I wonder to what extent a placebo effect, is just pervasive always. Like, has the medical industry beat placebo? How many times has it? Like maybe with aspirin, with like it wasn't beating it with the leeches, or maybe it was. Maybe the leeches worked until people stopped believing in it.
Yeah. I mean, I could talk about that. Like, had somebody that maybe I was or wasn't taking care of recently that, had problems for a lot of reasons, that I don't know if I want to go into, but that person maybe was interested in having their home medication started. And that was the problem. The real problem was that they needed their home medications restarted, and then I'll be okay. Because there's something, maybe you talk about neuroticism, about I got to take those pills. Now, granted, you can have withdrawal. There can be all sorts of reasons. But from my estimation, some of it was like a placebo, is like a psychological effect when there are very obvious other reasons why this person was having issues. One of them maybe being the amount of pounds that person weighed. And I mean, and I'm talking in greater than the average, and
greater than the circumference of my head.
And so that, I'm saying that to just say that, there are so many factors involved about these things that can't be encapsulated even into a scientific study all the time. Now they can give us the average, they can give us a percentage, but the account for, I think, to go back to Matthew Parlato's point about the combinatorial explosiveness of why central line infections happen, I think is very hard to get into a study. And I could go into reasons why, like they wanted us to put these alcohol infused little caps over the ends of all of them. And then I came to a hospital and they're like, no, that's not best practice anymore. And I think it was because my opinion is like people were just reusing them instead of getting new ones every time to save time. And so actually this was causing more of a problem. So let's just leave the caps off now. And it's just like, I mean, that's just one example of something that you're throwing darts at, to try to figure out, and you do these studies and they go up and then they come down.
Yeah. Well, I think that like the medical industry is one of those weird places, much like pastoral ministry or politicians, where it really only attracts like the very best and the very worst. You've got like all of these people who are doing their best to just like save people, and to make their lives better or to keep them alive, triage, and you've also got all of these narcissistic sociopaths who are getting, money on the back end and expensive dinners and galas, to push certain procedures and certain technologies. And so it's really like I want to honor the, like, this is why it's helpful for me to put it in like magician terms and wizard terms. It's like you've got some really like bright, bringers of light and healing who are they're using the best technologies and practices that they can find. And I think that it helps to understand that science is just a word that we have applied to a type of thinking, a type of procedure, a type of pursuit. It's the equivalent of whether you're pro-life or pro-choice. It's like we're trying to talk about the same thing, right? But when we split into factions, we can then, with our words, kind of, if the word is a wheelbarrow, we can kind of put whatever we want while we're taking the wheelbarrow to work. Am I getting totally off? I'm like sleep deprived, on drugs. Should probably get off before I embarrass myself, but I don't know. I like this conversation.
No, it's good, and we're having fun. So I gotta go, and I'll leave. But I want to say a couple things, and then leave you guys to it, and you can stop whenever you want. So first, the question I have, which I don't even want an answer for because I want to read this, but is, can you disabuse someone or talk someone out of wrong-headed ideas? Whether that's science or scientism or T-Grog or he, us or whatever. I don't think so. And then this is here, Grog. This is Science Set Free, or the Science Delusion, Rupert Sheldrake. So I want to read. So this is his scientific creed, and he has here 10 core beliefs that most scientists take for granted. All right, and then I want to read this, and then I'll just go because I like Rupert Sheldrake, and he's fantastic because he's one of those. He's one of those heretics that science should canonize because he's flipping fantastic.
One time on a private phone call conversation with Jonathan Dumire, we spontaneously erupted into imitation of Sheldrake and Mark Vernon.
Mark Vernon, yeah.
Yeah. It was like a secret handshake that I didn't know I could have with someone. But yeah. Please
for
read.
sure. And T-Grog won't take him seriously. But this is my point, is like meaning, value, salience. For whatever reason, who he is and where he's standing, what he sees and hears, he's not going to hear it, no matter what, no matter if it's right or not. All right. 1, this is the dogmas of science. There's 10 of them. Here they come. Number 1, everything is essentially mechanical. Dogs, for example, are complex mechanisms rather than living organisms with goals of their own. Even people are machines, lumbering robots, in Richard Dawkins' vivid phrase, with brains that are like genetically programmed computers. Number 2, all matter is unconscious. It has no inner life or subjectivity or point of view. Even human consciousness is an illusion produced by the material activities of brains, merely emergent phenomena. 3, the total amount of matter and energy is always the same, parenthesis, with the exception of the Big Bang, when all the matter and energy of the universe suddenly appeared, which is the Terence, no, what's the guy's name? Like, Give Me One Free Miracle, the guy who like hung out with Tim Leary and did the super dose of mushrooms. What's his name?
Ram Dass.
Well, Ram Dass was there.
Richard Alpert. Oh,
No.
then that's another guy there. Yeah, you're right.
I forget his name, but anyhow, he has this quote of like, "Give me one free miracle, and then I'll explain the rest." That's modern science. Anyhow, all right. Number 4, the laws of nature are fixed. They are the same today as they were at the beginning, and they will stay the same forever. Interesting. You don't have to observe them, by the way, like the speed of light. Rupert Sheldrake talks about that in here. They used to measure it. They don't
Terence
anymore.
Terence
McKenna. Thank you.
Now is it Terence McKenna?
Terence McKenna.
Terence McKenna quote.
5, nature is purposeless, and evolution has no goal or direction. Forget teleology, right? 6, all biological inheritance is material, carried in the genetic material, DNA, and other material structures. Physical structures. Physicalism, essentially. 7, minds are inside heads and are nothing but the activities of brains. When you look at a tree, the image of the tree you are seeing is not, quote, out there where it seems to be, but inside your brain. 8, memories are stored as material traces in brains and are wiped out at death. 9, unexplained phenomena such as telepathy are illusory. 10, mechanistic medicine is the only kind that really works. All right. Those are his 10.
Say we all.
He has a creed. I don't know where it is. It's maybe in this book where he like wrote out. It's essentially like the Nicene Creed for science. It's fantastic.
Before you go, Luke, could back out just a second because I wanted to pitch something at you.
Okay.
It goes, and it actually applies to what you were texting me earlier. We were back and forth about shoes and
jealous
and consumer choices and all that sort of thing. I think it seems to me you guys, you sound like it's a very American kind of discussion. You want liberation from the Leviathan, and there is there is no freedom to be had from the Leviathan. It's this huge, because you just have this enormous machine of sorts, or beast. It's as much alive as it is a machine. That is that is our culture that drives what we think is responsible behavior, responsible conduct, best practices, etc., whether it be in science or manufacturing or anything else. And no matter how you wiggle and twist, you're never going to completely free yourself from that beast. At this level, at this intellectual human level, that's where.
Let me bring a little Calvin to your Hobbes there. I think you can be free of the beast. I think that because
that was one of your funniest things and most clever. That was smart.
Yes, that was quite witty.
Thank you.
You need to make that a t-shirt.
I don't want to admit how long I held it in.
Bye, everybody. Have a good Saturday.
Oh, bye, Christian.
And,
thanks for talking to me.
And for the T-Grog, all you have to do is provide evidence, not write popular books for the masses. Just like all the new atheists, they provided all the evidence and they didn't write popular books for the masses. So I gotta go.
And also, here's all his research. He does research, like legit research using the scientific method. But people discredit him because they don't like his story and they don't like his answers and some of the things he proposes. So anyhow, sorry. No, you were still bringing Calvin.
Yeah. It's so fun getting to know some of Grog's like go-to moves. It's like seeing a wrestler over time and learning or a basketball player when they've got like a certain switch up. Because one of his favorite things to do is we defend somebody like Sheldrake, and then Grogan's like, well, why don't we listen to Muhammad? Why don't we listen to Mormons? And it's just so funny. It's like pull the back of Woody's string. But yeah.
So bring the Calvin back to Hobbes.
Yeah. I do think that there's an element of, actually where me and Grog probably agree in terms of determinism. I don't believe in free will to that extent. I only believe in a very hyper constrained free will that is in the presence of God. So I'm more on the bondage of the will side. But the good news of that is that we are always in the presence of God. And so what we're bound by is not this egregore of power, Nietzschean power hierarchies. We're held by our lack of faith. We're held by our distance from our creator. And so I think that gives hope in one sense, but it doesn't make the question easy. It doesn't make the embodiment easier. And so I think that just as, and this is also a Calvin point, but it's I have to trust. What am I trying to get? I'm trying to give a defense of at least being self-aware that Leviathan is not in control. I'm not a Gnostic. I don't think that the demiurge is keeping us down. I think that we're exactly where we're supposed to be. And I think that but that doesn't mean I have to submit to the state or submit to science. I want freedom, like Braveheart.
Okay. You want freedom until, look, if you ever need heart surgery, who are you going to go to?
I'm not going to say something snarky. I'm going.
No, I'm serious. Answer it seriously.
I'm going to go to the doctor, because my wife's going to make me. And I'm going to go to the doctor out of love for my wife. So I'm kind of
make it less existential. Make it less existential. Your tooth fucking hurts. It's burrowing into your jaw. If you don't get somebody in there that's good, it's going to fix it. You might even lose your jaw. That happens, right?
So I think that I'm an outlier.
You got an abscess. Who are you going to go to?
I'm an outlier here, and I don't want anybody to take what I'm saying as medical advice. I should say that. But I am the person who had sciatica for a year and, would have back spasms out of nowhere to the point where I would pass out. And so, and I didn't go to the doctor. It took me a year to go to the doctor with all of that happening. And so, yeah, I have a tendency to enjoy my thorn in the flesh a little too much.
There's a lot of science around back pain, and so that's a separate subject.
Mine was fixed
a tooth is straightforward. The tooth is straightforward. You pull it out. You can and you treat the infection and fix it, or you don't. It's back pain, and there's literature on it, and it's heavy on there's a very big psychological factor
but teeth aren't
component of back pain.
Straightforward because we keep finding ancient skeletons with perfect teeth, and how come none of us have perfect teeth like they did?
It's the 5G.
Sugar. We don't have perfect teeth because sugar.
Well, oh shoot! Did I lose my thought?
I don't know what happened here.
I don't know if it's correlation or causation, but my back pain went away, as soon as I started participating with TLC.
Okay.
Yeah, how's that, T-Grog? T-Grog, accept the Lord.
Grog, what ails you, brother? Come to the waters.
One, you have the benefit of being young. That's fine. Good health is and believe it or not, sciatica is not the worst thing you're going to experience before if you live long enough.
Probably impotence, I could guess.
Yeah. Lots of fun stuff. But what I'm saying is you need a tooth pulled. Who are you going to go to? And how do you want it done? You want it done by somebody competent, who's trained, who's certified, who's the system has endorsed. You're not going to, unless you're desperate, even if you're in a situation where there are no such persons around,
right? But
you're then going to search around for the best witch doctor.
I'm not trusting the system because of the system. I'm rendering unto Caesar that which is Caesar's because I'm rendering unto God that which is God's. Like God has placed these people in my life, and this is what we do. So I'm going to go to the dentist, and I'm not, because I don't have the cognitive capacity to make the best decision with every decision, and I don't primarily have that because of my neuroticism, which is what we were talking about earlier. Because I'm just so prone to not good thinking. But so yeah, like I go to the doctor when something ails me. Yes, I am relatively healthy, but I think that to the extent I trust the system and to the extent I trust science, at some point I'm still putting faith in something. And to the extent that I put faith in anything, I'm doing it hopefully in this kind of second-hand effect of me putting my faith in God. Because I think that that's what the Christian life is about, right? Like if I trust God that he's got the whole world in his hands, and that includes my bad decisions even, then I can still go to the doctor, but I'm not bowing down at the altar of, big pharma. When I do that, I can get the vaccine because my trust is in the Lord. Like, so that's what I'm trying to flip in my brain. Now that kind of like, I think for me is still an ideal because I still kind of, I trend towards the mean, like a word we were talking about.
But it's a fine line. It's a fine line between fatalism and faith. I see that. And it's then the question is though is I'll push it one step further. You don't have kids, but if you had a kid, you would know how important all these decisions become, much more so than even for ourselves. And so it's like your child has a toothache. Who do you go to? Your child has an earache. Who do you go to? You want to go to the best. Why do you want to go to the best? You don't want to just, unless you're Jehovah's Witness, you're not going to refuse certain medical kinds of medical help.
My point is that even all of those things are under the umbrella of the love I have for my children. And so like what's best is still kind of this third order, fourth order question, which and because I think that like I'm not disagreeing that I would want to do what's best for my child. And also I'm speaking, I only have pets. But I will say, me and my wife have spent far too much money at the vet. Our dog has swallowed a sock and ate a whole chicken carcass. And so we take him to the vet immediately. And some of that is because of the way my wife would disagree with me on all of this. She is basically trust the science, gonna do what's best, has her finger on the pulse of what small s society, all the things you're talking about, the competency, the social status that competency gains. My wife is like hyper intelligent, and that is one of the things she is best at, is kind of knowing who's really good and knowing the reputations of people and thinking through all of that. And so in that way, like I'm also blessed because I just my wife is incredible and matches with me perfectly so that we can kind of look out for each other in this regard. But
the Lord has
yeah.
placed you in this society, in this culture, and this culture has its systems and its approach to the world. You're not, as with Grog and I talked about last time, about you're not in an Amazonian tribe that has a completely different worldview and a completely different language system, and so your constraints are different than their constraints, but you still have constraints. You still have constraints.
Of course,
and what you are unhappy with are the constraints the Lord has placed on you, is what I'm suggesting. And this is what you're trying to free yourself from, and let go of that struggle. And then faith is, I'm in this place. I have this worldview. It is what it is. There is the Lord, and there is science, and there are these institutions. I have ludicrous. I live in a ludicrous economy, in a ludicrous polity, and so okay, God has a sense of humor. Now, what am I going to do with it?
Right.
See, well, it's rather than go fight it. Oh, this is Eric Weinstein, right? Eric Weinstein's butt hurt because he's not at the top of the hierarchy he wants to be a top of, and that's the only reason he complains. Oh yeah, it makes him wrong. I think absolutely it makes him wrong. It makes him wrong because his motivation is coming from a completely screwy and upside down point of view.
Well, yeah, it's hard to read someone's motivation just from the outside view.
It's flagrant.
He could sincerely. I think that you're right in the terms of like him feeling cast out by the in group. Absolutely, and he's felt that his whole life too. Like he said that. But yeah, everything you were saying up until the point where Weinstein came in, I agreed with. Like I'm not actively trying to fight the system. I'm not one of, I LARP sometimes as McWoke, and I LARP as Christian anarchist, but really I'm a like Protestant monk, married monk, I'm trying to read my Bible and pray every day. I'm trying to do good at my job. But all of that is, it's under the larger umbrella of trying to increasingly put my faith and hope in Christ and not fall prey to peace that I can understand. And so in a lot of ways, like the world has made it increasingly easier to do that with the whole polycrisis or meta crisis or apocalypse that we're going, whatever it is we're going through right now. The end of an empire, like there's so many, we have this idea, all over the place. And so like, I am resting in the constraints that are placed on me. But it's for freedom that Christ has set me free. And what has he set me free of, if not the need to put my faith, hope, and, love into some system that is doing evil publicly? And you can, name a system. So I think that like, I also realize that like I can say things in a way that I say things in a way that I am kind of just processing, but I say it with so much confidence and poise that it can sound like I really believe some of the stuff I'm saying. But yeah, just thinking through this.
Uh-oh.
Did I freeze?
Yeah, I think you froze. One of us froze.
But yeah, I like. So yeah, I was just trying to agree with you earlier about the trust and I think that I probably have a more radical view of it than a lot of people do, and that's because like of the mysticism and the neuroticism and all of that stuff. But and the church hurt, you could say. But well,
RJ I think you're still young and idealistic, and Luke is still young. He's not quite as young, but he's still rather idealistic, and I've been there.
Where's the idealism that you see? Because I don't feel idealistic. I feel nihilistic.
Oh my goodness! Absurd. No, even the idea that you could be nihilistic, thinking of yourself in these terms, is still a kind of idealism. I think it's. I think when you get at my where I'm at, it's like. It's just what I take it kind of, I take most of life at face value, and I just sort of like, when I see myself becoming too shaped by some mental conception of myself, then I kind of reevaluate and try to let go. But that's just probably age related and
That's the Buddha in you.
personal. I beg your pardon?
I said that's the Buddha in you.
I don't know. It's something. Yeah, good or bad. But but I just felt like the anxiety over, well, before off screen, Luke and I were going around about sourcing for good quality shoes. What's a responsible purchase, right?
Yeah.
And not wanting to buy something made in a Chinese sweatshop or whatever. And the thing is okay, so you don't buy something, you buy something handmade that costs 10 times more. Great. You know where it's made, but you don't know where the materials came from.
Yep.
The oil in the plastics may have been fracked and poisoned somebody's water supply. The leather,
dinosaurs.
and the leather may have been produced through some cruel practice and so on and so forth in the tanning process and so on and everything else. So even if you have something handmade in a beautiful bespoke sort of situation, small crafty shop, all the materials, the adhesives and so on, the machinery are still part of the Leviathan.
Yep.
There's no getting. That's what I'm saying. When the machine is the Leviathan is Leviathan, and you didn't see Christ pushing against the Leviathan. Leviathan, in fact, what you saw in Jesus, and this will be my last point. Sorry, guys. It'd be Jesus. My understanding of the Leviathan and Jesus is when he says in John 3, it's condemned already. I didn't come to condemn it. It's condemned already. That's not our problem.
Yeah.
Our problem is getting rescued and recovered out of before, not getting swallowed by it. And it's not all here and now. It's both here and now, and it's for eternity. And I'm with you on your faith journey. I just would let go of some of the fatalism and accept your place in society would be my fatherly recommendation to my beloved son McMo.
I really do appreciate that. Yeah,
it's what I'd say to my own son. So.
Well, I thank you, Father Mark. RJ, you've been on and you haven't said anything yet.
I mean, I've just been listening. Hey, Mark. Hey, McMahon.
I gotta go, guys. Sorry.
Like I said,
hi, Mark. Thank you.
Like, I wasn't gonna come up and.
Thanks for the wise words.
So, that's anyway. How's everybody doing?
Doing great, man. I out of nowhere kind of just woke up at like 3:30 this morning, and couldn't go back to sleep, and I don't really have much to do today. And I dropped my wife off at work, and she was like, "What are you gonna do today?" And I was like, well, hopefully somebody is going to be live streaming and I can like talk to my online friends. This kind of worked out perfectly, but I am starting to feel a little bit sleep deprived and just kind of yeah.
Dude,
tired,
I'm right there with you, man. Like I've got some kind of like head cold or something going on, and maybe I even sound a little bit off, but yeah, like my brain's not fully braining, but I definitely had like a couple of thoughts based off of what you guys were talking about. I mean, I thought it was really pretty interesting to kind of how we've moved around the ball from the original like monologue deal. I'm just gonna be like me and just
bring
be
us
like,
back.
here's what I was like thinking of when you guys were talking about, and hopefully it's not reversed on camera. This is out of Matthew Pajot's book.
Yes.
It's like the whole classic chaos and order. And then you get to kind of like where we've been at in the conversation, which is kind of like working out some of that good stuff. And, the Leviathan or the Matrix, call it what you will. But, I posted this as a comment earlier, and I just like feel like some keywords are like popping up in my brain over this conversation and a few others. But those keywords are like jargon, translation, intention, and practicum, which is kind of what seems to be like
What's
some of
practicum?
the concepts that. So I would define practicum as a set of events that have happened. And I would
Okay.
also say that it's specifically not praxis, because praxis is activating theory and practicum is looking at things that have happened. Or defining
Okay.
defining participatory modality through actual participatory events that have happened, one could say.
Yeah.
And that brings me back to the language point that I think actually you may have made earlier, which is what made me look at the book. And quick plug, I have to skedaddle in just a little bit because I'm participating on a book club on this thing.
Oh, sick.
Isn't terrible. Just my two thoughts, but yeah, that's kind of what's been on my mind. I don't know if that jogs
Yeah,
anything for you guys.
Yeah, that's ringing a lot of bells for me. And maybe unless somebody else gets on here, or if Sherry wants to come in and keep it going, I don't have admin privileges. So if we hit a good stopping spot, I wouldn't mind leaving. But
Well,
the chat.
I almost forgot, since you mentioned Sherry. I was listening to The Castle, and there's so much about the metaphorical mode. If you think about it through the parable of the owner of the mansion, and the castle, that fits so very much in line in what we've all been talking about today, and Matthew's book as well.
Yeah. How familiar with like Wittgenstein language games are you?
Fairly, but like it's buried under like 10 years of life experience and everybody else's language games.
Yeah, exactly. Wittgenstein seems
But
to be
that
like.
reminds me, not to cut you off for the final time.
You're good.
We do need to schedule the Kierkegaard thing, man. Or you need to get on Discord, one way or the other.
Yeah, I'm on Discord. You should be able to find me on Discord. I'm pretty much like McMosav everywhere. So I think actually I'll double check that, but I'm not the best at getting back with people. But if you have Luke's number, he has my number. So just
Well, we'll figure it out on the back end.
Yeah.
My bad, though.
No, you're good. Yeah, Wittgenstein is like Wittgenstein. It seems like it flip flops every like 10 to 15 years. But Michael, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to make the final point that all systems are optimized for the benefit of baby boomers, which is important for Mark and T-Grog to understand the situation.
Fair enough.
Is that a Sartori quote, or is that a Thomas Sowell quote with the quiet part out loud?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think he is a baby boomer. Probably.
Yeah, that's the quiet part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thomas Sowell has a tendency to ruffle the feathers of people who are like him.
Yeah.
In arbitrary ways, such as generation and race. But yeah. All right, cool. Well, I guess we could.
YouTube friendly topic.
Yeah. Well, I got a bone to pick with Thomas Sowell because he's got a book that's called like Black Rednecks and White Liberals or something like that.
It's not a bad read, but it could have been presented a bit better and a little bit less in certain veins.
You know how he kind of talks about like the Scotch Irish people and how they're like
that's half his argument.
Yeah. Well, I am that. Like I
can see where that would rub you wrong, dude.
No, I love it. It explains me to a T. I'm like, hell yes, this is my culture. I'm lazy. I don't want to go to work. Like, just let me relax in a hammock all day and just, overeat and like all of this stuff. Yeah, like absolutely. I'm like, dang, that describes me to a T. But it is kind of funny for me to pretend to be like really, upset about it and like, hey, I'm a human being. God damn it.
Yep.
I'm just hearing dueling banjos in the back of my head. Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. Luke, if you're in the comments, either come on or close this down because I'm getting tired. All right, I'm gonna sign off, boys.
All right. Well, I'm gonna
me
leave
too,
too,
man.
So I'm at the
Have
airport.
a blessed day, everybody.
See ya.
Oh no, it's just me on stream. Make it end.